Good evening from Miami BTV. Just before I go on my travels again, I'm sending loads of love to you as usual. But before I go, finally, I get round to Paul Sykes, Frank Burley, and one of my besties from Yorkshire, who was Frank Burley's co-defendant, Billy Burnside, who I used to train with, who's a legendary figure, who I put in my top 5 Leeds Yorkshiremen of all time from what I saw in a prison environment. He knocked out a lot of screws, right? He laid out a lot of inmates. I even got into conflict certain times because I would ride with Billy Burnside over certain other cities and all that. But yep, we already knew that Uncle Yami is Leeds through and through, I'm afraid. Like it or not, some of you, I will never deny the club that I supported from a little boy, where I used to travel and sneak out from children's homes and go everywhere. And that's why the Yorkshire lot took a shine to me whenever I reached certain areas, other cities during my institutional stay. They recognised straight away that, Yami, you're Leeds through and through. And they were one of the truest set of men that I ever came across. I told you that I saw Frank Burley a couple of times in life. I didn't tell you I forgot about his co-D, who I was more closer to, Billy Burnside, right? Strong, and everything like that. But before I start with the Paul Sykes thing, right? And now listen, this is very important now. The dates with the Bronson thing that you lot were talking about in Hull, a lot of you, unless you've got a different venue, come back at me, because that bit isn't true. Paul Sykes and Charles Bronson were not in Hull unit together. Paul Sykes got to Hull unit in 1987. He was one of the first men in there. He caught up with a gym officer in another prison who was going, boy. That Paul Sykes turned round and said to me, he said, I wouldn't have minded, but he was calling me a boy, but he's younger than me. And he went back. Facts, man. He knocked him out, man. So they're doing a smaller sentence then. Still a big enough category to end up as one of the first people in Hull control unit. When it opened, Charlie Bronson got to Hull control unit 93, 94. I'm believing, if my memory serves me correctly, now that it's all coming back to me, that he took Governor Wallace hostage in Hull, right? And ended up in Wakefield in 94. I think the date could be March, April, that kind of time there. Now, I've made mistakes along this way with my dates, places, and people who I thought was in that one, but might have been in a different one, because my mind's so clogged up with institutional madness that I can't get it right all the time, especially when I'm in and out of addiction and all that. Many of you know that. That's why you stuck with me and wait, yeah, maybe on form soon. But hold on, I've been on form longer than usual this time. Wake up and smell the coffee, some of you, because I would not be relinquishing this. Charlie Bronson wasn't in Hull with Paul Sykes at that time, right? So I also listened to you when I came out. I didn't know what to say because I thought I'd missed the trick here, because I never used to hear about Paul Sykes and rape and boys and all that. I heard he might have swung a couple of different ways in that, but I was scared to go up there and thing. And I jumped on the social media thing of going, yeah, riding what others were doing out there, because I was new to the game and I got a few things wrong. I know now that where I thought Paul Flint punched Paul Sykes down the block, I forgot to clarify that earlier today. I have to confess to that. I know that my hands. It wasn't Paul Sykes, it was Paul Byrne. And so they've been pulling me the last month saying, Uncle Yami, I was with you down there. That's not who that Paul, in that early bit of the 80s, that's not the Paul Sykes. The Paul Sykes you saw with Build a Bomb in the local, that's the Paul Sykes. And the Paul Sykes he was in a private prison with when he was down in Segment, that's the Paul Sykes. Oh, wait, you're joking. Yeah, because Paul Sykes and Sykes, Paul Sykes and Paul Flynn were in a unit together as well. Imagine that. But not at the same time as Bronson, though Flint was with Bronson. But hold on a minute. Let me get my memory right here. Billy Burnside, he was in Hull unit. Because when he went, Billy Burnside, he was in Hull unit just around about the Bronson time probably, because he was laying out screws left, right and centre, right? So I saw him early. And then after that, if my memory served me correct, right, he went Long Larton, Billy Burnside, and I think laid out a governor. Don't hold me to that. But they sent him from Long Larton block to be with me in Parkhurst. And me and him used to train. Me and H was there at that time and all that kind of thing. But I used to team up with Billy Burnside against other cities and that, whether they liked it or not, because you knew that I was a Leeds man through and through. And as far as I remember, Billy Burnside is a hardcore Leeds fan and he's from Leeds. So I would always go where the passion and the emotion is that I remember from a little boy. That's never left me. I've told you that in my story on many, many occasions. I'm going down to Leeds soon to interview 3 or 4 people. I'm hearing through the grapevine that Billy Burnside might well be one of them, where I've been scared to talk about Frank Burley because of the stuff I'm hearing about the death. I don't know what to come up and say, something with his missus, the Italian side of it or something like that. They was in safe house after everything that happened. But I've got my own version of what happened there, whether it matters or not. Uncle Yemi doesn't really say that today. What I say is what I saw in prison in them small moments. I believe that Billy Burnside was more physical, more of the physical man of the two of them. They were Codees on the 14 and served nearly all of it, I think, right? But Frank Burley had a lot of skills, right? But I spent shorter time with Frank Burley, as I said, than I did with Billy Burnside. But Uncle Yami puts Billy Burnside near the top of the tree from what I saw in prison, mate. And there's going to be a lot of people that tell you that too. And I've got 2 more names. You wait anyway. But I listened to you lot talking about this rape thing, and this one was here, and they stuck it on Paul Sykes and all that. Listen, let me tell you one thing. And these are facts with their characters. And anyone that knows people, whether I spent a lot of time with this one and that one, I know 1,000 people that knew that person. I know 1 million that, a couple of thousand that knew Build a Bomb. I knew 1,000 that talked about Paul Sykes. And they say that their characters, I only have to see them for a minute, and I know that you can't go and call it on there because they're going to respond straight away with violence. That was the life they led, right? Like many of us in a different way did, but they from that era are the standout figures for the fighting thing. They took on more fights than everybody else. They were more skilled, naturally. A lot of people are not going to have fond memories with Build a Bomb. He's a bit more charismatic, the Paul Sykes in a Cockney way, but in a Yorkshire way. Paul Sykes had his character thing as well. Whatever tickles your fancy, that's what I say. I also bring to the table as well, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about the relationship with Frank Burley, Billy Burnside and Paul Sykes. But as far as I remember, they went on a few things outside during that life as well. I can't wait, man. I'm coming down to Leeds in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to shed light of it. Like the Inquirer said the other day, none of you have ever said who Sykes done that to. And yeah, but this one said that and that one did that. You've got to learn this life. If it was in a Crown Court and all of you were talking where this one thing started from that got bigger and bigger, I don't know what his sexual preferences was, but never. How come I lived in there all my life and I never heard about no rape? And that Phil Curry was in there with him in Parker's. And you know that you can't get away with that kind of stuff. All right, it happened in... Well, if it happened in... Who? Bring... Oh, yeah, but they were not prepared to talk. Well, what's the point in talking then? You know what I mean? You can't convict someone based on the likability factor or because they've done this to some of your pals or because they're not on the right side of the criminal fraternity to the gangs that you're on and who you like and who you don't like. I'm afraid no one chooses the rules in the jungle, man. These are the characters that made up true crime history, like it or not, man. You know what I mean? But you and I know, you be realistic, and Yami has to be realistic, man. I get things wrong, and I got things wrong, but I'll always come up here and say that, you know, when I do get things wrong. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm going to let off some bombs soon with those dates and times on paper, and I'm going to bring it to the camera. For if you're talking Hull with Bronson and Sykes, you're talking shit. You got me? I'm telling you that, man. I'm here to be shot down, you know what I mean? I don't get everything right. But Uncle Yami says, yep, I believe wholeheartedly that Charlie Bronson cannot beat Paul Sykes in a fight. You lot said that to me when I first come out, but because they said, yeah, but Yami, Sykes, I'm going, yeah, all right. I'm scared to like be as assertive as I am in the recent times, in different times when you've seen me on my journey. I'm not doing it no more, mate. I ain't doing it no more because he never went to court for nothing like that. So as far as I'm concerned, it's just based on absolute shit. Well, if that's the case, you don't say nothing about Reggie Cray. You know what I mean? But then you lot seem to have more evidence on that kind of stuff, not belittling Reggie, but you lot seem to come up with this happened and that happened at this time and all that. You didn't do that with Paul Sykes, though, did you? You know what I mean? There's just a couple of the things I'm just letting you know, man. I'm not slagging no one off, right? But when you're talking, make sure you get all the facts. I'm going down to Leeds. I will be interviewing 4 men, as well as my nephew Shane Smith, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. You remember when I last went to Leeds and I was outside Ellen Road for the first time in years and years and years, and I saw him briefly. I'll be interviewing my nephew down there as well. So I'm going to kill about 4 birds with one stone. Listen to me. I'm going looking for Billy Burnside. That was my boy. I believe that he was one of the greatest from Leeds of all time, as well as two more that I haven't mentioned there. Sending loads of love. A long trip. I got to go somewhere and sleep tonight. Gordon Bennett, Yam.